I think Gap was like the retailer of the 90s, right? Like that's what everyone pictures when they're picturing, Friends, the cast of Friends on the couch in the coffee shop. It was kind of such an iconic brand. Why don't we switch over and talk about Old Navy and Gap? Because I think when you're thinking Old Navy, the dynamic is similar with the parent company, but this is a brand that operates in a totally different space when it comes to consumer spending.
Yeah, so these are much more differentiated brands, and I actually like Old Navy as an investment more than I do Madewell. For one reason, yes, Old Navy is doing fashion. On some level, they have to hit with customers. On the other hand, as a parent, there is an age where your kids don't care about fashion. For me, it was up till about 10. My son didn't care, and then he started to really care. Where you're just like, I need pants. And Old Navy sells cheap pants that are reasonable quality. They sell jeans that for an adult are somewhat disposable jeans because they wear out. But for a kid who's growing quickly, that doesn't matter. So the sustainability of Old Navy, because it can sell to younger age groups, or even just like, yeah, I'm trendy for most of my clothes, but I just need a cheap hoodie because it's going to be cold. There's a very defensible part of that business. Gap really just hasn't changed its menu. It still sells a lot of like denim and things that are just not at the moment all that popular, and they haven't really been able to pivot. And part of that is because they do own other brands, and those brands have staked out different territory that have prevented Gap from going there. So again, this sort of needs to break off, and Old Navy is literally going to open 600 to 800 stores, go into markets they haven't gone into, and I'm fairly bullish on that prospect.
Yeah, some of the other brands under that Gap umbrella, we have Banana Republic and I believe Athleta as well. That's right, Dan?
Yeah, and Athleta's been sort of a mild success story, but it's not that much of a standalone brand the way Old Navy. I mean, who doesn't know Old Navy? Old Navy has giant stores, whereas Athleta is more of like part of the Gap brand. Banana Republic has its own problems. It's a high price point, maybe even a little higher than Gap, with sort of a diminishing return. So this is a case where you are getting Old Navy, which is growing quickly and has the ability to expand at a time where its size of store is something retailers are desperate for. They will be able to go into any community, look at any shopping plaza, whether it be a mall or in their case, they have a lot of off-mall locations, and somewhat name their own price because there aren't a lot of people opening 20 to 40,000 square foot stores. And there are a lot of vacancies. That's basically one floor of a closed Sears. And a lot of malls have closed Sears. So you could put, say, office space or a gym up top and an Old Navy and your problem is solved. So there's really big potential. And they've managed to keep their clothing semi-fashionable, because I don't think anyone thinks of Old Navy as all that hip, for 20 years. It's really been a long time where this has been sort of an acceptable default, nobody's going to mock you too badly if you're wearing it kind of brand.
And they've always managed to be affordable. I think that that's something that there's a clear difference between Old Navy and Madewell here, where, you're thinking about buying clothes for your family or something like that. It's a lot easier to be like, okay, we've got a young kid, or, I'm going to be kind of wearing this around the house while I'm hanging out with my young kid. And yeah, it's probably going to get stained. And so I'm going to spend $10 or $20 on this shirt rather than, 50 or 60 on a very well-made shirt from Madewell that, is probably going to get tomato sauce on it at some point.
Yeah, and it's important to note, Old Navy contributed 85% of Gap's profits. So it's clearly doing its work. And as a parent, I can tell you now, I don't spend that much money on clothes. You joke that I wear a uniform. I do. I own 1 billion of this shirt, and I live in a hot climate, so I wear a t-shirt most days. But when I lived in a northern climate and needed cold weather stuff, I shopped at Old Navy quite a bit because I work from home alone. I don't need to impress anybody from a fashion point of view. So just buying, a sweatshirt to wear around the house or to go to Starbucks or whatever, it just wasn't that important. And that's always going to be a niche for Old Navy that even if the fashion part of its brand sort of falls off and the 17 to 22-year-old thinks the brand's really uncool for a while, that's okay because dad's always going to be uncool and kids up below a certain age have never cared about cool. It's still always going to be, at its height, maybe Target is equal, but generally I'd say Target's a step below in terms of brand perception. So it's a very smart space, and it's a company that, has been putting up big growth, but some of its proceeds have gone to cover for losses at its sister brands.